The intelligence services have tracked different malign activities against this country by Russia's spies and military. The Parliamentary Intelligence and Security Committee wanted to assess the seriousness of this shadow conflict. Their draft report, still classified secret, sits in the Cabinet Office and is called simply Russia.
There you are.
Ed Lucas gave evidence to the committee.
The title of the report is Russia, and that's right, because it is very broad. There's a whole spectrum of things that Russia does, ranging from the hard military threat through to intimidation and targeted operations against individuals, plus the role of Russian money, which is very important, Russian propaganda, which is very important. And I think that the focus on particularly election interference is probably distorting the overall message of the report, which I suspect is that the Russian attack on this country is very broad.
Since Downing Street decided that it couldn't vet and declassify the draft before Parliament was dissolved 2 days ago, attention has focused in particular about what the committee might have to say on electoral interference. Sir Mark Lyle-Grant, until 2 years ago the National Security Advisor, oversaw the intelligence machine and offers these insights.
Their interventions in the Scottish referendum, for instance, would have been on behalf of the side calling for Scottish independence, and in the EU referendum, in order to weaken the European Union, which has long been an aim of Putin's Russia, it would have been on behalf, or in support of, if you like, the Leave campaign. I don't think that is surprising. I think what would be surprising would be if the ISC report concluded that those attempts by Russia to influence those two campaigns actually made a substantial difference to the outcome.
Sir Mark thinks the decision to hold up the report, announced by a Foreign Office minister in the Commons on Tuesday, is not unreasonable.
So it is entirely right that reports such as these go through an intensive security review before publication. The current length of time that this report has been with the government is not unusual.
But Whitehall officials have told us that the amount of time given for Number 10 to clear the report was adequate in their view, and many have criticised Downing Street's decision as a mistake, especially given the Intelligence and Security Committee, or ISC's, likely conclusion that Russian interference didn't swing the 2016 referendum.
It's a triple mistake. First, because this information is really important. Secondly, because it hasn't stopped us talking about it, as the fact that you're doing a segment tonight shows. And thirdly, from a constitutional point of view, the ISC is the only real bulwark we've got against the government and the intelligence services misbehaving and getting things wrong. And if this government rides roughshod over the ISC, there's a real danger that a future government could do the same. And it's now in question that this report will ever come out at all.
So if Russian efforts didn't have a major effect on the Brexit referendum, why not allow the ISC's report to be published? We've heard that Downing Street was worried about that whole topic coming up in the run-up to an election, but also concerned about how journalists might speculate about the blanked out bits, the redactions that happen in any ISC report. In effect, then, they've put political expediency ahead of national security, and that worries officials that we've spoken to. Now a new electoral contest is underway, the intelligence agencies will be watching for actions that they argue are in Russia's long-term interest of sowing discord in a country they consider hostile.
In this particular election, I would be surprised if they weren't trying to use social media bots, using false accounts and things to interfere, to just create greater divisions in the country.
Within the union?
Within the union, but frankly, this is such a fractured election that we're facing. If I was a Russian spy trying to undermine British democracy, it'd be difficult to know quite where you put the effort.
Many in Westminster and Whitehall see larger issues at play here, a power struggle between those at the centre of authority and the attempts by Dominic Grieve to bolster the importance of his committee. And in Downing Street's decision not to clear publication before this election, there is a possibility, as he acknowledges, that the committee's Russia report will never appear.
The fact the report has not been published before Parliament rose
and was dissolved, means that the earliest it could be published is when it returns after the 12th of December. But the reality is that at that stage there will be no committee, and there may well not be a committee for another 3 or 4 months thereafter. So the risk exists that in fact we will not get the report published until April, and indeed there's an added risk that the new committee might not wish to publish it, or alternatively that the government will continue to refuse to do so. So I very much fear that the report may never see the light of day.
The country must now choose a new parliament and Downing Street appoint a new intelligence committee. We might then learn more about the old committee's judgments, whether, for example, it accused the government of complacency in its response to previous Russian transgressions. For the moment, though, their report remains secret and out of sight.